I'm traveling across America to read 50 books in 50 states, and this week we're traveling to Colorado to read Go as a River, a book that's set among the Colorado mountains. While we're there, we're exploring the local landscape, checking out local bookstores, yapping about books, and finding epic places to read. Stories come alive when you're standing where they're set, so join me in Colorado for the next stop in this adventure. Welcome to Colorado. Colorado is the second state that we're visiting in our 50 States Reading Challenge. And our book for Colorado is Go as a River. It is historical fiction set in 1940s Western Colorado, so a little bit different than the area that we're in right now. It still has the beautiful mountainous backdrop. This story is a coming of age novel with a subplot of like a forbidden romance. Supposedly, I haven't gotten very far into the book. I'm only about 30 pages in. We have a little bit of reading to do, but the writing is already very lyrical and atmospheric, so I can see why this book has a lot of good reviews. And it's also supposed to be very sad. So excited to read a little bit more of Go as a River, and we will just be popping in and out of this throughout the weekend. I'm going to read for a little bit and I will update you soon. We did some damage. So we spent the afternoon going to a bunch of the bookstores on Pearl Street, which is this beautiful like brick paved pedestrian mall in downtown Boulder. And they have tons of bookstores. So the main two that we spent most of our time at were Trident Booksellers and then Boulder Bookstore. So at Trident Booksellers, I picked up The Trial, and I've actually been looking for this book for a while. It's kind of hard to find. Trident, I would say, is a smaller bookstore. It's also attached to a cafe, which is very cozy. They have a more curated selection of literature. They have more classics and award-winning literature as their main selection. They also have a cute little selection of tea and pottery that is just very quaint. This was a good cozy bookstore that I would want to hang out in for a little bit and maybe just read some of this or some of this. The next bookstore that we went to was Boulder Bookstore, and I picked up two books at Boulder Bookstore. One was one of their staff recommendations. It's The Convenience Store by the Sea. The little recommendation plaque says, "This book is utterly charming. While convenience stores in the US aren't much to brag about, in Japan they serve fresh and pre-cooked meals. The store in this novel takes on an almost magical quality as the customers find hope and solace in this cozy space." Sounds very interesting, sounds very cozy. I love cozy translated fiction. I think it's just a nice way to break up some of the heavier literature that I've been reading lately. And then I also picked up An Oral History of Atlantis, which is a story collection. And this has been recommended to me by some of my friends on Booksta. So I'm also very excited to get into this one. I've heard great things. Boulder Bookstore is a very, very large bookstore. They have a collection of new fiction. They have tons of sections for like travel and history and even like a meditation room, which is super cool. They also have a very good display of like their top sellers and their bookstore recommendations. Boulder Bookstore is definitely where you want to go if you're looking for more popular fiction, if you're looking for new releases. And they even had a really good selection of like new releases that were slightly used at a discount, so that is always nice. Boulder Bookstore has 3 floors full of books. They've literally thousands. I would compare it to like the Strand in New York, where they just have a bunch of different sections for a lot of different genres. So if you're looking for a new release or something that's been published recently, I would definitely recommend going to Boulder Bookstore because they have just an incredible wide selection of a ton of different books. I also had to pick up some little stickers for my journal to commemorate our little Colorado 50 States reading journey. It's been a pretty rainy day here in Boulder, and we've just spent some time going around to some different cafes, drinking a lot of coffee, and spending some time reading, which has been great. I'm about halfway through Go as a River, and so far I'm enjoying it. I will say the first 50 pages or so were really slow, and it was kind of difficult for me to get into, but it really starts to pick up around that point, and I am thoroughly invested now. The forbidden romance is very much a side plot. It definitely adds to the story, but it's not central to the plot. I would say it's much more a coming of age story, and I do enjoy those generally. So the writing is just so beautiful, very atmospheric, and really paints a picture of the landscape of the rural Colorado community that this takes place in. Like most of the reviews have mentioned, it is pretty sad. There is a lot of tragedy that happens, especially in the first like 50 to 100 pages. I'm not one that gets super invested in books, but it does add to the plot of the story for me. Now I'm at the point in reading where I don't want to put it down. I want to keep reading to see what happens, which is always the mark of a good book. I'm excited to get back to this. I think we're going to do a little bit of reading this evening, and then hopefully find somewhere scenic to read at some point as well. Okay, so I was about halfway through this book last time we talked, and I sat down last night and ended up finishing it in one sitting. I feel like the story really finds its footing in the second half of the book. You see a lot of character development and also recurring themes. Despite my hesitation in the first 50 or so pages of the book, the storyline is very intelligently woven. I almost want to go back and read the first part again because I feel like I have such a better understanding now of where everything was going. So as a little bit of background, the central character in the story is Tori, and she is a 17-year-old, and this is kind of her coming of age tale. She does have a love interest named Will in the first part of the book, but this is just a very small part of her story. The other main aspect of the book is the Western Colorado landscape, and more specifically, the peach farm where Victoria grew up with her family. The whole atmosphere is so beautifully written. It's basically a character in and of itself, and it mirrors Victoria's journey in a lot of different aspects throughout the story. It's so brilliantly done, and there's probably a lot of things that I missed because I was reading it so fast that I just overlooked them. So one of the central themes in this book is to adapt and thrive in the conditions that you are given. And if you think about it, the peaches are not well suited to the Western Colorado climate. Victoria describes how her grandfather was so determined to bring these Georgia peaches to Colorado, and through years and years of trial and error, he finally got the orchard to thrive, which kind of circles back to the title of this book, which is Go as a River. And go as a river is something that Will said to Victoria very early on in the story. And she was like, okay, I get that that's your mantra, but I don't really understand what it means. But there are a lot of times throughout the story where she goes back to this, and you kind of see her understanding him in a way, and also determining what this phrase means for herself. She faces a lot of adversity and always has to kind of change course to weather the conditions, much like a river does. I do think that the book was a little bit limited by its length. It's only about 300 pages long, and I could totally see this being a generational epic if she would have touched on some of the main themes a little bit more in the front end of the story. There are a lot of different ways she could go with it, and it was a very enjoyable read, but I do feel like it could have been longer. So as far as reading this in Colorado, which is the point of this 50 States Reading Challenge, I think the mountainous backdrop was so cool to read the story next to. The writing in this book is already super immersive, and the atmosphere is just so well done. Being next to the mountains and outside just added another layer to the already immersive atmosphere of this writing. I thought the symbolism in this story was so brilliant, and like I said, there are probably tons of things that I missed, but you could just see how well thought out the storyline was, which I really appreciated. The pacing was a little bit slow in the beginning, but it did pick up towards the middle and end. So overall, I am giving Go as a River 4.5 stars, and we are now 2 states into our 50 states reading journey. I am very sad to be leaving Colorado, but super excited to go to the next one.